So I think getting yourself a routine through the week that ticks all the boxes so you feel like you're ready. And I obviously didn't know this at the start, but yeah, whether that's catching 10 balls after training, every single training, like they've got to be good ones, and running through your shape and just being confident with it. Whatever you need to tick off during the week to make you feel good.
Welcome back to the Keegan and Company podcast. For those who are new to the show, my name is Keegan Hipgrave. And guys, if you haven't already, could I get you to jump over, give us a little like and subscribe on whatever platform you listen to this podcast on, whether it's Apple, YouTube, Spotify. It's a great way for us to grow the podcast, grow the platform, and just have some incredible conversations and some incredible guests like I have on today. In this episode, I'm joined by professional NRLW player for the Newcastle Knights and Australian Jillaroos, Tamika Upton. Tamika, how are you?
Good.
Hey, thank you for joining us while you're mid-origin camp. How's the camp going?
No, it's been unreal. Obviously having camp on the Gold Coast. We're absolutely loving it. We've been training hard and we're having a bit of an off morning, so it's been nice.
And hey, we're doing it tough. Like the sun came out, we had a little coffee in the morning. We were walking down to the local cafe, and I was like, geez, we're so lucky to be back here, hey?
Yeah, the Gold Coast is absolutely beautiful. The weather's turned it on and the beach has just been beautiful.
Yeah, but you lived here on the coast for like 2 years while you're at Bronx, yeah?
Yeah, so I actually moved. It was really funny how it all worked out. I was supposed to move into allocated apartments with the Broncos and it wasn't quite ready. And
Brisbane?
Yeah, in Brisbane. And I happened to be doing a gym session with Millie, who was like, my roommate's just moved out. Come live with me on the Gold Coast. And I was like, oh my goodness. And yeah, I kind of come and never left. So it was really cool to be here for 2 years.
How'd you go living with Millie?
It was definitely interesting.
Yeah?
No, we're polar opposites, to be honest.
Really?
Like,
How so?
She's like upbeat in the morning and has got a million things going on, and I'm living a very relaxed lifestyle. So it was definitely different, but I think, we brought the best out in each other.
I saw Liv Koenig and Keely Davis moved in with Millie and Coogee, because I used to live in Coogee when I was in Sydney, and I saw them all living together, and even like on their podcast they talk about like how they think they're going to go living together, and it's actually great content, hey?
It is. I absolutely love their podcast, but I think Keely nailed it. It was like, when Millie's in the house. I absolutely lost it at that.
Yeah, she's like very upbeat, but she's like good chat. Imagine the chats that they're having in there, far out. They'll be solving all the world's problems.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a good little get the girls together before the season, and yeah, they'll be a tight-knit group for sure.
Origin camp. How many days are you guys in? What have you been doing? What does the first couple of days look like?
Yeah, so we've been in for 7 days and we started in Brizzy. We did a bit of a fan day, which was pretty cool, had our launch, and then we headed here to the Gold Coast, and we've honestly trained the last 4 days.
Yeah.
We'll do one more training and then we'll sort of take it back a bit before Captain's Run.
Because for context, this episode will probably go live after Origin. So you got Origin this Thursday night. How are you feeling?
Yeah, feeling really good. Obviously training together helps. Previous to that, we've just been playing in the Queensland comp, separated from each other, which has been nice, obviously, to get some games under our belt, but to get together with the group and put it all, like what we've been talking about the last couple of months, put it all together in the trainings has been really good.
It's cool that you guys get to like play beforehand, because last year you went straight into an Origin game with like no games under your belt. How does that change things?
Oh, 100%. I think we all learned last year, like, it's the toughest game, and no matter how much you prepare for it, like everyone's doing their own training, everyone's running, keeping fit, but game fitness you just cannot replicate. Especially
with you, because you're doing big Ks as well. Like imagine the cramps that would be coming in.
Oh yeah, I felt them about 20 minutes in, and a lot of us outside backs did. But yeah, that second game was just so much better having that game under our belt.
Do you with the Queensland competition, like you said, you got to go back home to Rockhampton to play for your local team. How's it been back there?
Yeah, it's been incredible. When our season sort of kicks off, NRLW, I actually can't get home. It's 2 flights and it's probably more than half a day of travel, and you just don't have enough time break to get home. So playing for the Capras has been unreal. Obviously playing with my sister, playing with girls I grew up with, and actually getting home for the first bit of the year, it's been amazing.
Imagine mum and dad would love having you home as well.
Yeah, they absolutely love it. And I got a little niece and nephew who come to heaps of Newcastle games actually. They're Newcastle fans and they absolutely love the footy, so they've been down watching too.
How's the culture building in Origin? Because I know when I was coming through doing all the junior Origin stuff, 16s and 18s and 20s, the culture was such a big part of it, and even like talking to a lot of the boys who are now playing like for the real State of Origin, they do so much like culture build, like team building, and it's like that Queensland spirit. Do you guys do much or like have many conversations internally?
Yeah, definitely. And I think we do all that. So we have wide squad camps, like emerging camps.
Throughout the year?
Throughout the year, pretty much before we get into camp. And I think that's even better because there's like a squad of, I think it's 35 girls, and we're all doing it. We're constantly learning about, the past, which is really cool to see where it's come from. And then once we sort of come into the camp, we know.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning. Everyone's getting educated, and the culture is a huge part to the Queensland.
What type of things do you guys do? Like, do you bring like past players in? Like, what kind of, like, give us a little insight into what that looks like.
Yeah, so we have past players. We actually have past players on our staff, which helps. So we have past players, and they brought Greg Inglis actually, which was amazing. He was obviously my idol growing up, and I absolutely loved it. And he just hung around camp, and he was so chill. But even just his presence there was unreal. So he was there for the emerging camp, and then we've sort of done some new education pieces. We got some exciting things. I can't really say what it is, but we got some exciting things coming up for game 1. So what we've been learning, but yeah, it's really good vibe sort of heading into the camps. And when we're here, it's pretty crazy.
You said Greg Inglis was someone you looked up to growing up. What was it about him that stood out?
Oh, obviously he was a freak of an athlete. I think I just loved how casual he was, or he seemed. I actually didn't know, but he seemed very casual off the field.
Yeah.
And he could just flick it on the field, and every time he touched the ball, something happened. And I loved South Sydney growing up. So when he went to South Sydney, it was the best.
Why is South Sydney though? Because you're from Rocky.
It's so weird. So I actually grew up in Blackwater, and there's a little town like 10 minutes away called Bluff, and their local team is the Bluff Rabbitohs.
Gotcha.
So like I think everyone from that area kind of supports the Rabbitohs, and that's just how I grew up.
What are some of the things that you learnt from Greg throughout the camp?
I think the biggest thing from him was like we're learning all these sort of structures and techniques, particularly when it comes to tackling and getting tackled and everything. And I'm obviously a different build to a lot of the girls in the team. So they're all learning these big things. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And he just come over and he was like, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
He's like, this is what I did. He's like, don't waste your energy. Like, you're not going to win some battles. Try this would work better for you. And I was like, oh my goodness, like even just something little like that, it was like light bulb.
Yeah, that ties into like the full thing of like the crew you hang around, like take that on or off the field, but like being in a good environment in terms of like training, like that would be so huge. And it's so cool that the Origin crew, like they bring in past players as well. Like when we were doing under 20s, we did like a little oppose against the main side, and that was so cool because you get to see how they operate. And then from under 20s you go into like a full-time system, so you kind of know a few of those guys and girls, which is really cool. Who was some of the girls that you looked up to before coming into like, I guess, like professional, semi-professional footy?
Yeah, so like you can't go past Ali. Obviously, when I was sort of first coming in, she was the big thing, and she still is. And it's just so funny with her. She has such a presence, and she probably doesn't even know it. Like she is the most casual, laid back, genuine person. And I think even that helps. Like you just sit around her and you're like, oh my goodness, that's Ali. And first coming into the Broncos, obviously, she was the captain. And the way she can make people feel as if they belong there like instantly is probably one of her best traits. I kind of want to talk about like the Origin, like the games, because last year you guys had 2 games, and I know there was a big uproar because it's just like, we need 3, like the girls need the 3. Can you run us through a little bit of how that sort of came about and I don't know what it looks like now? Yeah, so obviously the way it ended wasn't the best, but I think there was a bit of uproar, and I think the NRL probably saw the product and thought like, it's deserving of 3 games. The fans absolutely loved it. Like Townsville was incredible.
Townsville looked insane.
It was insane. So like I think the record got broken for a standalone the first game.
Yeah.
And then Townsville just upped it like a couple of weeks later. It was absolutely incredible.
How many people were there?
I actually don't know off the top of my head. It was, I think it was 19,000.
Yeah, I thought it was like floating between 20 and 30,000.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I actually don't know, but I think as well it's the atmosphere there. Like you can hear and feel everything, and even just watching it back, like you can still hear it all.
We were having that conversation this morning, hey, like if you have like a big stadium like something like Suncorp, like 50,000, if you had 20,000 in, it's great. But when you have those like kind of old school stadiums that it's like it's all packed in, like it creates such a good vibe. Do you feel the difference?
Oh, 100%. And even the Newcastle game is going to be incredible. Played a few games at Newcastle, and even just the vibe of the stadium, like the hill, like you can just feel it. It feels really close to the field, and it sort of goes up, and it feels like they're on top of you. Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait to get there.
We'll dive into a bit more footy because I really want to hear how you got into the Broncos and the transition from Broncos to Newcastle, and obviously so many fun things have happened in the last year or so, like with the Gillaroos and obviously like playing State of Origin and winning a comp. But before we do that, I kind of want to jump into like what it was like growing up in Rockhampton and what it was like growing up in the Upton household. Were you always super sporty? Was it always rugby league? Like what did it look like?
Yeah, so my dad, he works in the mines, so hence why we started a little bit inland in Blackwater and then sort of went to Emerald and finished up in Rockhampton, which is like the city of CQ, you would say.
I've been to Blackwater.
You have?
Yeah. We did
Oh
we did a country visit out there, and it's super rural, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, there's a couple pubs on the main strip as
Yes.
well. Like it's a great little it's a great little town.
It is. Absolutely love it. But I think he was obviously doing a lot of work, and mum had the 3 kids. My brother came a lot later, so there was 3 of us, and yeah, she was obviously so hardworking getting us to sport. We all played sport growing up. My older sister, actually, I kind of just followed her in whatever she did. So she's about a year and a half older than me, and whatever team she was in, I was just in. So she probably hated it growing up, but I absolutely loved it. So I played touch, netball, played rugby league with the boys, and then obviously the cutoff age was there.
It's like under 12s, yeah?
Yeah, it's under 12s. It's really weird, but...
What do you move it into? Because was the rugby league, like, I don't want to say rugby league was your favourite sport, but what was your favourite sport out of all of them?
I think it is rugby league, like watching rugby
Don't
league.
let me put words in your mouth either. If it was touchy, it's fine.
I absolutely love watching rugby league. I've tuned into every game pretty much, all the men's games, but touch was fun to play. It's so fast, so quick, and there's actually a lot of competitions throughout the year. So like you're constantly busy, and I think I liked that growing up. It took me to some really cool places and met some really cool people. Netball was fun, I think, but it's a bit hard for the old knees, just jumping around all the time. But no, I love touch footy, but growing up in CQ, it's footy mad. Like rugby league, it's incredible. So I think seeing that, like once I saw the women's origin game, I was actually at a pub and I saw it on the TV and I was like, oh my goodness, there's women's rugby league.
How old were you then?
20.
20. So when did you think like, was that the time when you thought rugby league could actually be an option going forward?
Yeah, 100%. That's when I didn't even realise there was competitions happening. And then a friend hit me up about playing local league, like, oh, we need numbers. Can you come and play? And I hadn't played obviously in like 9 years. So I was like, yeah, sure. And sort of just jumped in, played a few games, and I think someone from the Broncos, whoever was recruiting, must have heard, and I got the last contract spot in 2019.
When you were 20?
Yes, I believe.
How exciting! Like, what's the feeling there when you get the call up?
Well, I just thought it was surreal. I was just like, what do you mean? Like, I'm going to move to Brisbane and play football? Like, it actually, it didn't really make sense to me, and I didn't actually realise at the time. So I relocated. And I was obviously really nervous. So I actually stayed with family friends instead of moving into apartments. Yeah. So stayed with family friends. It was a lot of learnings that year because I'd never stepped foot in a gym. Like I barely did gym.
Really?
So, yeah.
So like when you were in high school and when you were coming out, you were just playing touch, like a little bit of netball.
Yeah.
Are there any other training?
No, so we did like probably circuit training in the gym.
Yeah.
But when I walk into Broncos and there's girls throwing around all this weight, I'm like, what are they actually doing? It was insane. And so one of the trainers would just take me aside pretty much every session and like teaching me, oh, this is how you back squat. This is how you do. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so out of my depth here.
Yeah.
But out on the field, there was actually a fair few injuries in the squad. I think, there was a wing spot. I think the fullback spot, there was heaps of injuries. So I was actually just plugging in and playing wherever, sort of on the opposed side.
Yeah.
And so, I played a bit of centre, wing, fullback. I was actually in the front row for a fair bit as well.
Can we have a look at that? Can we get some footage of that?
Honestly. And I think I remember Steph Hancock being like, oh, you're doing well. And I was like, no, I'm
Imagined you off the back fence.
I know, honestly. But it was cool, I think, that experience to see every sort of position, and I was just happy to be wherever. And it actually ended up that Julia Robinson wasn't ready for the first game, so the wing spot was open, and that's when I made my debut.
Oh, run me through your debut, because it's always a special occasion for everyone. Like, how did you find out? How was the game? What did it look like?
Yeah, so I actually got called, and I was just like, the whole first year was like a blur. I was just like, oh my goodness, I'm actually playing. And I sort of rang my parents, and they were obviously so excited. And I was like, I'm playing on the wing. Like, this is so, like, I'm going to be under that high ball. And that's the first thing I thought. Obviously, watch a lot of rugby league, and I just thought, I'm going to be under that high ball.
Yeah.
But it kind of worked out well, because they definitely targeted me. I was like 50 kilos ringing weight back then. But I was actually catching them, and then I didn't have to take a run. So I was like, this is the best. Like,
well, you didn't want to take the run?
No. I was so scared. I was honestly so scared and a bit out of my depth, I think.
Scared of the collision?
Yeah, I just think I was probably scared of letting people down in a way. Like, I feel like as an athlete, you know in yourself what you're capable of, and I knew I was not capable of taking hit-ups at 50 kilos. So, I was actually just doing a lot of the catching, which was cool. And after that game, it was like the monkey off your back. I was just like, oh, my goodness, thank God. And everything from then on, I was just so relaxed. Like, trainings were unreal. And, I actually played a couple more games, and then I think the coach saw, my development and was like, I want to put you fullback for the grand final. Do you think you can handle that? And I was just like, yeah, I'd love to. Like, I'll do whatever. So, once I got that debut out of the way, I didn't realise how nervous I was, but I really was.
That's the thing about confidence, like building confidence. And I look at probably a lot of younger girls that are coming through, like it's going to be their first. Like, there's going to be a lot of firsts coming up. How do you, what advice would you give to those young crew? Because you said, like, once you were in it, it just felt great, and you kind of had the evidence to be able to be like, oh, I can actually do this. Is there anything that, like, you sort of picked out of that experience?
Probably just the preparation. Like, I had no idea then. So, like, now I look back and I do my preparation through the week. So, like, game day comes and I'm not thinking about anything. I'm actually thinking about just going out and having fun.
Yeah.
So I think getting yourself a routine through the week that ticks all the boxes so you feel like you're ready. And I obviously didn't know this at the start, but whether that's catching, 10 balls after training, every single training, like, they've got to be good ones, and running through your shape and just being confident with it. Whatever you need to tick off during the week to make you feel good, to get it done.
What are some big things that you like to tick off throughout the week?
So, I like to be confident under the high ball. Like, it's so funny. Like, people just think you go out there and catch it, but it's actually a lot of training.
Scares the shit out of me.
Yeah. You have to actually, and you have to keep upskilling it. It's not like you can just, once you catch it once, you set.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still constantly training. So I think, I'm doing that after every single training, just catching a few and making sure they feel good too. It's not enough just to catch it. You've got to actually feel like, when it's up in the air, that you're going to get it.
Gotcha.
So I do a lot of that. I make sure the people, so the outside backs outside me are ready, prepared when it comes to, like, kick mapping and making sure, like, oh, we know she's going to do this, this, this. Are you ready to come here if I'm here? Like, a lot of that chat happens between, like, myself and the wingers. And then, defensively, just making sure we're all in tune defensively. So a lot of chat with the middles and just making sure everyone's confident.
Who's driving these conversations? Are you driving the conversations because you're fullback now with the wingers, centers, and everyone else?
Yeah, I would say definitely myself. Obviously, I'm a bit experienced, and we've had a few girls come in. Like, we had Sheridan Gallagher come in, and I think she'd played 2 football games. Like, and she was absolutely incredible. So I loved playing because she was just so fresh, and just anything
just
that
raw.
was that was said, she was like, sweet. And she had this bit of confidence about her that I really liked. And you can just feel it when someone's confident. It actually makes you confident.
Really?
So yeah, it's been pretty cool.
How do you go navigating, because you're obviously a leader in the sides that you play in now? How do you go having conversations with the younger girls that are coming? Because like you've been there before, like you've been the girl who's like, let me just get this first game under my belt. You know, how do you go navigating the conversations with the young girls?
Yes, I try probably not to make too much of a big deal about it, because I am really laid back and I'm actually pretty introverted. So I wouldn't just come out and be like, bang, like this. It's more so like, how are you? How's things? Like, how you feeling? Stuff like that. And just watching them at training probably and making sure they're all aware of it. Like, I think the one thing, and I wish sort of I was told this as well, is you have to play your game. So like, it doesn't matter if you're going out there thinking, I've got to do this. You've got to play to your strengths no matter what you're doing. So I think that's one thing I try and tell the younger people, like, you know, if it's there, if there's a run there, like just take it. Don't worry about what's happening. Like that's your strength. Just take it.
How do you go now being a leader in the side, just concentrating on your job? Like, do you worry about other people doing their job? Is that a thought that comes into your mind at all?
No, not really. So a lot of it's done in the week, like I said. We keep everyone accountable sort of to their own role, but I think I have in the past been drained in a way of just making sure everyone else is okay.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, so it took a while sort of to learn that you have to be able to do it in a way that you're still focused on your own job. And I do a lot of extra work outside of training. Like I'll be in doing video probably every day, whether it's like defensive or attacking. Like I actually do a fair bit of video and like seek a lot of advice from like mentors that I trust and everything like that. A lot of meetings with the coaches, but yeah, at the end of the day, you have to make sure you're prepared. And I learnt that, like, I've got to be prepared so that I can do the best to help everyone else.
You seem like a full footy nerd, hey?
Yeah, like, I absolutely love it. I really do.
I obviously have a few conversations before we jump on this podcast with just some friends and some people close to you. And the big thing was just like, Tamika loves footy. Like, like she's like watching every game. She's doing so much video. And from... like I was very much the opposite when I was playing. I was like, I liked rugby league, but I didn't love it. And in my head, it was always just like, well, we do so much video and training throughout the week, where it's just like, oh, I don't want to watch the extra games of footy, because it's just like I always had this weird analogy where I was just like, well, if you're a plumber, you're not going to go watch plumbing videos at night. But that was just me because I needed to get away. But then I looked at the guys who are obviously the best in the competition. So think like Cherry Evans and Cleary and these guys, and they're all like footy nerds. Like they watch so much video, and it's like, and you can see the difference between like good players and then like great players, hey. But yeah, looking at what you're doing, it's just like you're on like the right track, yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's like probably positional as well. Like I'll even be watching footy and I'll see someone like do a move and I'm like, oh, like screen record that. I'm like, send that in. I'm like, that is sick.
Yeah.
But I've actually had a few people that are similar to you that just rock out, and it actually works for them. It's like they get away from footy, they get away from everything. Their mind is so clear when it comes to training. Like they've literally simpled it right down and they get out there and kill it. So it's probably what works for preparation.
And everyone's different, right? Do you have anything that you do to get away from footy, to switch off, or are you just always on?
I'm kind of always on in a way, but I think like I actually really like just putting my phone down and just doing anything off my phone. I think you can get very distracted there, but I've obviously lived by the beach. I like going out socializing. Like I love going out for a coffee with friends. And yeah, probably, you know, aside from putting my phone down, is making calls back to my friends and family back home. So I probably do that every night, but yeah, you just need probably a full mental reset.
I don't know what it is, but there's something about being on your phone for so long. You know, when you're just scrolling and you're like, oh my God, I've had like, I've been here like 20, 30 minutes and you've just like wasted it. Like I hate that. But then on the opposite side, when you get away, like last weekend, it's been like a busy start of the year, right? And I was just like, I need a weekend just to get away. Like left the laptop at home, left the phone like in the car, and just detoxed for like 2 days. And I came back just feeling so like energized. Yeah, it's great that you do that. Yeah,
it's so funny, and it's funny, like I've got so many messages and calls and I'm just like, oh, sorry. Okay. Like I'll get back to that in a couple of days. But yeah, like you said, it's like a mental refresh and I actually get guilty if I'm on my phone all the time. By the end of the day, I'm like, oh, what did I actually do today? Like I did nothing. So I get the guilt about it. But yeah, you definitely need one of those every couple of weeks.
How I want to talk about your time at the Broncos. Like, cause how long have you been playing in the NRLW for? Like 20, started at 20.
Yeah, so 5 years.
Coming up on 5 years.
Yeah.
So how was that time? Because you guys had a pretty solid team, yeah. Like how was that experience there?
Yeah, it was really cool. And like I said, that first year went like a blur.
Yeah.
It was honestly so fast. And we were obviously playing 3 games with the grand final. So, yeah, it went very quickly. I think it was the 2020 year was a big year as it was COVID.
Yeah.
And we flew interstate, which meant we had to be locked down in Queensland. And we were all locked down. You could only go to training and home, and that was it. And that was a pretty, like, I look it back now and I think it's a pretty cool experience in a way that it was just us girls. We didn't have any friends or family be able to come watch us, which was pretty sad. But I look back now and I'm like, fuck, we actually went through a lot, like mentally. And we were actually living, so 4 of us lived together in a little 2-bedroom apartment. Obviously, we didn't want girls to be separated. We literally just didn't want to be separated and like girls to be like on their own, through it, because that's all we had. You actually couldn't leave.
Yeah.
So I look back now and I think that's a pretty cool experience for a couple of weeks. And we had fun. And we obviously got the win, which kind of made it all worth it.
The grand final win?
Yeah.
How hard was it transitioning from, or what did it look like transitioning from the Bronx to Newcastle? Because obviously Newcastle was an up-and-coming side. Were they a new side that came into the competition?
Yeah, so they were new like the year before, and they didn't do too well. I think they didn't end up getting a win, but they had a few games not go their way. Like I think it was a field goal, and Caitlin Johnson was out for most of the year. Obviously, she's incredible, but when I sort of got approached by them originally, I was just like, no way, I'm not leaving Brisbane.
You were set in Brisbane? Yeah.
I had it set, and my manager was like, no, you need to go and experience it. It's good personal development. Like you just need to go. And I sort of went. And I was really like taken back by what Newcastle was actually like, firstly. Like as I was flying in, I was like, oh, it's all industrial. Like what's going on? And it was really slow and chill, and I really liked that. And then we sort of got into the COE, the Centre of Excellence, and they had Blake Green sort of doing...
One of the great men.
Oh, he's unreal. And he had some videos, and I actually really like I don't like people saying, oh, you're so amazing. I actually like, you could do this better. You could do this better. I really like learning. So when I got in and he had clips up and he was like, I'd be doing this. And I learnt so much in like 10 minutes.
Is this, had you signed there, or this is just like to go and check it out?
This was just checking it out with knowing full well. Like I was like, I'm not signing.
Yeah.
Like I had it in my mind. And I think my manager even said that, like, look, she's probably going to stay. We don't want to waste your time. But they were like, no, we want to come, like we wanted to come see it. And that 10 minutes was crazy. And I was just like, wow, this is a genuine option. Like I absolutely loved it.
Yeah. And so and the conversations, like, did it just like fester in there and just like, okay, this is something that I want to explore? Yeah,
so we sort of did it. We had a few meetings. Hannah Southwell actually came as well. And I was like, I ended up asking her afterwards, what were you doing? She was like, oh, I was just there because you were there. And I'm like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. Like just a familiar face.
Yeah.
But when we walked out of there, I was like, oh my goodness, that was really good. And he was like, I think you need to sit down and actually think about it now. Like it's a genuine option. But yeah, after that sort of negotiations were happening, and it didn't like quite work out with Brisbane, but it made sense because like my heart wanted to stay in Brisbane, but my head was like, go to Newcastle.
Yeah.
You're going to love it. But it was such a tough decision.
How was the conversations with the girls leaving Bronx?
Yeah, it was pretty tough. Like it was like, I think I was, Millie and myself was sort of the first ones to leave that group that were together for a couple of years.
You guys went together, yeah?
Yeah, so it was like no one else sort of had left yet, and it was a bit like why would they leave? Like what are they doing? And we come off a loss as well in the semi-final, so it was a little bit shocking to people, I think, but then like I got a few messages after the year I had first in Newcastle, and it was like, you look so happy, like you look incredible, like you made the right decision. So at the end of the day, they all care about you as a person. And
I always wondered that about the female space, because even talking to girls in like netball, there's not that many, like there's not that much movement. And even if you were to leave, it's some of the girls like, it's a little bit tough to, like, it's a hard pill to swallow. Whereas, like, in the men's team, it's like the boys are pumped for you. Like, congrats, like, such a good, like, we're going to miss you, like, sort of thing. Even I remember, like, when some of my really good mates left the Titans when we were there, like Kane Elgee left and Carl Lord, and they're two of my best mates now. I remember because, like, you'd get up in front of the whole team and you'd say, the boys are crying. I'm looking over at Ryan James and he's just in tears. And because, like, you obviously you get so close to these guys, right? And I always wondered about the female space, if it was like, if they are obviously happy for you, or if it's just like, or like, oh, why would you leave? You know what I mean? Is it a bit like that?
It was like that, particularly because the money, like, there's been a minimum and a maximum for a while. So it's like, you're actually not going to get more money going elsewhere. So it's like, why would you leave kind of thing. But now it's pretty normal now. Like, I think we're seeing a lot more movement because there's a cap. And I think it's healthy. Like, we've actually had a player that's leaving and she's playing her last year, but we're all like, oh my goodness, good on you. Like, how good for you. Like, you've set your future up. Yeah, so, like, I think it's changed now because it's more normalised.
And you've obviously had a whole bunch of success at the Knights, won the premiership last year. What's been a career highlight? Is it the premiership? Is it the Gila Rouge debut last year? Like, what does it look? What's been a favourite highlight?
Yeah, I think last year in general, obviously we lost a few players, and I think the group felt that. So, like, our first couple rounds, we were just, like, not ourselves. We just kind of scraped through games and you walk off and you're like, oh, that wasn't good.
Yeah.
And I think we had a bit of an honesty session led by Hannah, and it was like, does everyone buy into this? Like, do you actually believe?
Good from her.
And it was just like, once we all sort of had that, got that out of the way, the trainings were just so different and we actually started to build. And I think that, like, we peaked right at the right time.
Yeah.
Sort of to the semis, to the finals. Like, it was, an incredible run.
Played Para in the grand final, yeah?
The first year we did.
First year.
So this is the second year. So we ended up playing Titans.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah, and they were in good form too. Like,
yeah,
they peaked at the right time as well.
And they recruited well, with Talia and Jamie, and they got a good side. But I mean, it's cool. It's cool to see just, like, the diversity in, like, the teams at the moment. What do you think about the female space growing? Because I've seen the AFLW, like, they went really quick, like they had 16 or 18 teams in a matter of a couple of years. But then you look at the NRL, who take a bit more of a slower approach. Like, we're introducing another 2 teams in the next year or two. Yep. Where do you see the female space going? What do you think you prefer?
Yeah, so obviously I've kind of liked the slow rise. We saw last year depth was a bit of a, like, if you had good depth in your squad, you were sweet, or more so if you had no injuries, you were sweet. And we were probably one of those teams that had the less amount of injuries. So it's very disruptive if you end up getting a few injuries because your depth is tested instantly. And I think in the next few years, because of the slow building, like, the depth of the squads are going to be incredible. And particularly the pathways. Like, I've been involved in a few of the pathways in New South Wales, and there's girls there that are killing it. Like, they're training pretty much full time.
So cool.
And they're like 15, 16 years old. So they'll be ready in a few years. So I think it's going the right way, nice and steady. Two teams next year will be interesting.
Who won the bid? Dogs?
Yeah, it's Dogs and Warriors.
Warriors, so cool.
Yeah, I feel for them though, as the multi-year contracts are kind of in play now. So there's like, there's probably less to choose from as girls are kind of locked down. But no, I'm very excited to see what they end up doing. And I think it's more so we have these options now. Like, we actually didn't have these options before to relocate. Like, you actually couldn't. The money wasn't enough to leave your whole life behind. But, there's options now for girls, which is exciting.
What would be your favourite thing that you'd like to see in, like, the next CBA negotiations? Like, is there something is it around, like, pregnancy policies, or in terms of, like, minimum wage? Is it, or, like, education? Like, what would be something that you'd like to see?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think probably a full year scale of training. So we'll go away for a couple months, and, like, if you're not experienced, you're not knowing sort of what training you should be doing, and realistically you need to be ready before preseason comes around. We don't have enough time to be able to build your body up and do all those sort of things. So hopefully it gets to, like, all year round sort of contracting where you're in training pretty much the whole year. I think that's, from an S&C point of view, like the women's game is obviously pretty behind in that aspect, and you're seeing it now. Like girls are just getting fitter, faster, stronger, and the product is amazing. So hopefully it gets full year.
Yeah, that's a really cool conversation to have. I did an interview with Taylor Harris. She's like a AFLW player, incredible athlete, and also like professional boxer as well. And I did like a live interview with her with Whoop, they're like a recovery tracker in Sydney, and part of the conversation was like the full-time versus part-time model, and you know that conversation around like, well, should girls be paid before they get before they increase the amount of games, or should they be training beforehand? And she came to was just like, you've got to put in the work. Like we've got to be fitter, we've got to be faster, we've got to be stronger, but you've got to take that upon yourself as well. And it's an education piece, yeah. Like when I was coming through, I'm so fortunate because I was a young male coming through like the junior Bronx, but there was no junior female teams, right? So imagine now with like the junior development coming through, imagine what the game's going to look like in 5 or 10 years' time. It's going to be incredible, yeah. But she said that what I was getting at was like, you've got to go out and you've got to take ownership of that. You know what? Like, then there's going to be times where, yes, it's right to have a break, but you've got to dial in when it's time to dial in.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you see sort of the top players in the NRLW are doing that. Like they're training consistently, and just the preparation is so different physically and mentally. Because, you can definitely get lost. Like we'll play for 6 months of the year, and then people sort of go back home and come back, and it's like completely different. So, yeah.
And 6 months is a long time.
It is a long time.
When you do like 6 or 8 weeks, I'd be starting to feel sloppy. Like you've had too many beers and you're like, you know what, this is like, I need to get back into training. You almost crave it.
Yeah.
Tamika, this is a mental health and sport podcast, and I'm very grateful of you coming on and just being, I guess, happy to have these conversations. Is there a time throughout your career that you'd like to touch on, or that you feel comfortable talking about any struggles that you've been throughout could be on footy or off footy?
Yeah, so I think obviously injuries play a tough part, but I look back at sort of the injury I had and see it as like a learning piece. Like that taught me, if anything, how to prepare.
For the listeners, could you give us a little rundown of the injury?
Yeah, so I had a pars fracture and a bit of a bulging disc. So it was sending like heaps of neural activity down my leg, and sometimes like I couldn't feel my foot. So it got to the point where it was too bad that I had to just have, I think it ended up being 3 months of nothing, like no walking for more than 5 minutes. I honestly sat around, like I literally had to sit on the couch. It was insane. It drove me mentally insane.
Yeah.
But sort of after that 3 months, we could slowly start building. And I think I was running again at like 5 or 6 months. And even that was so funny, like learning to run again, because my whole injury was my running technique.
Yeah.
So even just like on the treadmill, like running to these taps. And I was like, what is this?
They broke it down that small.
Yep. So it was like, it was insane to go through that process. But I look back now and I'm like, my preparation is so different now. Like my recovery is so different now. And I'm glad I had that lesson early on. So that was obviously very interesting. But sort of what I was saying with that is when football and everything was taken away, like even just walking for more than 5 minutes was taken away, like I learned there's so much more to football. You need to have something else like mentally just to keep sane.
How was your mind frame when you were like in that time for those 3 months periods? Like, give me a rundown. Like, what did it look like?
Oh, it wasn't good. It was just like, I just felt like it was going nowhere, and I'd sit down for so long, watch so many move, and I'm just like, what can I be doing? Like I actually can't do anything. But I had really good friends at the time, had obviously good family back home. But once the rehab process started, it was so much better to actually just see some improvement. But yeah, just the 3 months of sitting around was not good.
That's so tight. And it's such a good learning. And I have conversations, obviously, like we have a lot of conversations on this podcast, and a common theme that I've found is like, because obviously like people they're comfortable talking about, you know, some struggles and vulnerabilities, but all the conversations that we've had, it's just like they learn from them and they move on from them, and like none of them are like, I wish that never happened. Obviously there might be some things, but the amount of like key takeaways that they learn from it is incredible. Like resilience, you talk about preparation, like what does your preparation look like now?
Yeah, just through obviously gym. So I'm in the gym 3 to 4 times a week before the season starts, and basically we've simulated a preseason, my SNC and I, which is I gym in the morning and run in the afternoon. Like I'm simulating all that so I can actually handle the load when it comes to preseason. So I think breaking it down like that, there's been so many learnings.
You said that you're very routine based. Imagine that would have thrown you out of routine pretty heavily.
I think that's what it is. And when it comes to the routine side of things, like I actually cannot deal when it's flipped. And so I remember talking to you about it before, but going into football camps is like the most stressful time. And I'm not mentally, like I wasn't mentally aware of it. Like packing like 3 days before I leave for camp, everything is off. Like I'm irritable, I'm stressed, I can't sleep. And I just never really knew why that was happening. But I look back now and it's when you come into camp, your routine is so different. You've got breakfast, 7:30, meeting, 8, strapping this, and it's just a full list like army camp style.
Yeah.
And that's not how I live my life. And that adjustment is so hard. Well, was so hard for my brain to comprehend being able to do.
Because when I think of routine, I think of people who need a routine and that need that structure. So I imagine like stereotypically you'd go into a camp and you'd be like, well, everything's already planned out for me. But not for you. You're the opposite. You like, I imagine, a bit more cruisier.
Yes, I'm so much more relaxed, and I think it's like the times and everything you have to do, it just overloads my brain. So it's like, you know, at this time you got to be wearing this kit. We'll go back for lunch, which is here. Come back, you got to be in this kit. So all that just is kind of, and honestly, I can't sit still, and I can't actually have a clear mind when I'm in camp, which is so funny because I actually love camp. So I love being around my friends and I love football. So you would think camp is like a holiday.
When
really.
did you start to notice that it was stressful?
Well, I look back now and I've always been like it. Like growing up, like in high school, going away for touch camps and touch trips, I was always just a little bit off, and I just never sort of knew why. But after my injury in 2020, we had the COVID 2-week Origin camp. And in that camp, you actually couldn't leave. You couldn't really do anything. And obviously I was injured, but it just sent me insane. Like some days I just couldn't get out of bed. Obviously I had the injury, but mentally I was just like, I'm so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like I need to get back home in a way. But yeah, that's probably when I realized. And I've spoken to like a fair few people about it who made it seem so normal. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like that in itself was so much better knowing, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just uncomfortable, and gave me sort of strategies to deal with it.
And so before we dive into the strategies, because I want to flesh it out on what it actually looks like. So coming into the camp, you said irritable, you couldn't sleep, you were struggling. I imagine like a bit of I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like maybe a bit of anxiety as well there. Is that kind of what it looked like?
It actually is. And I'd find myself getting snappy and like I have to pack, and then I'd do so many things and I wouldn't actually do anything. Yeah. So like the 3 days leading in, I'd leave time to pack, and then I'd go to do something else, not do it. Go to do something else, not do it. And by the end of the 3 days, like even just for this camp, I packed probably the night before, even though the first like 3 days before I was stressing about it, stressing so hard, but didn't do it. Yeah. It's just like you actually can't get a clear enough mind to just sit down and flesh it out. Yeah.
Was there a time where it was like, it got really bad?
Yeah. So probably that camp. It actually was like panic attacks in a way. And I didn't really know what they were, but I was just so stressed out that obviously I didn't know how to deal with that in itself. I didn't even know what it was. But then I was like, why am I having panic attacks? Like I just had no idea what was going wrong with my body.
What does a panic attack look like? It's
just like probably a lot of heavy breathing and your mind is just racing. Yeah. And it sounds like that's not a big deal, but when your mind's racing, you cannot concentrate like on anything. So
I get it. Yeah, no, I've definitely had panic attacks before. I similar to you, I didn't know what it was. I thought I was just like super stressed or super on edge, but it was just like, it's like your heart's beating. Like, I don't know what it was like for you, but for me, it was just like my chest like really tightened up. My chest really tight. I was overthinking a whole bunch of things. Obviously, like over emotional. I didn't know what to do. I remember like just calling a friend, like, and just like probably just crying to them. It's like, fuck, I don't know what to do. And then obviously like pulled out of it. And then when you can like zoom out, I think that really helps. But you talked about coping strategies. First of all, how did you get to the fact of like who to go to for the coping strategies?
Yeah, so it was actually funny. So like I had one when we were training. So I sort of went off and the physio sort of noticed and she was like, oh, what's wrong? And like you said, the tight chest, I was like, I need to get this jersey off. Like I need it off. Something's happening. So I was like, so she was obviously there while it was all happening. And she sort of said afterwards, like, here, I've got a number for a sports psych. Like, try this. And obviously I had an injury, so it was probably a good little intro to do it anyways. And she was incredible.
The sports psych was?
Yeah, chatting to her, I was just like, oh my goodness. It just made me aware of it. And I think when you're aware of something, like it just, normalizes it, takes all the stress away from it. And I learnt so much with her, and she's the one who taught me all the strategies.
So to run me through the strategies, what does it look like?
Yeah, so firstly, like she made me aware, and like I keep saying that, I know, but I was just like, wow, I'm just uncomfortable. Yeah. That's it.
It's normal. Like, people are going through this all the time. Like and it can be so isolating. Like that's why we're having these conversations now, because I imagine it's going to be a lot of people who will be like, I've been through panic attacks as well. Like I'm going into training, I feel uncomfortable. So it's just like, well, if Tamika's doing it, so can I. Like it's fine and it's normal.
Yeah. And I was just like, that was the first thing that took so much pressure away. Was she was just like, it's so normal. And then the second thing she sort of said to me, which sounds so silly, but she said, when you get into camps, like write down what you need, what your schedule is, so you're not constantly trying to find what's next. Write it down, have it next to you, like have it on the mirror next to your bed, and just pack your clothes. And I was just like, oh, this sounds so silly. And like I really didn't believe it. But once I started doing it, it was just took out of my mind, what's next? What do I need to do? When do I need to get ready? It took all of that out, and I found it was so much clearer.
Really? Yep. You also talked offline about like grounding. How can you run me through grounding? What grounding is?
Yeah.
Because when I think of grounding, I think of like taking my shoes off and like walking in the grass, like, which I'm sure is another way of grounding.
And it's so funny. How I learnt this was so funny, and I look back and I'm so grateful for it. Was that camp that I was struggling. I remember a good friend of mine, Doozy, so Chelsea Leonard Doozy, and we actually haven't spoken about this, so she probably doesn't even know the impact she had,
That's good.
To be honest, but she was just like, pulled me aside and was like, we started playing chess, and I don't play chess at all. So she was just like teaching me, chatting to me, and she's like, are you all right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sweet. Like, and I obviously didn't really want to talk about it. And I was like, just a bit stressed out, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, one thing I like to do, and she's like, and it's really helpful, is just get grounded. She's like, and I obviously had no idea what that was. And she's like, just pick 5 things you can see, smell, touch, hear. And she's like, and that will just take your mind away from things. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. And the conversation just left there, and we just continued as if everything was fine. And I started to practice that, like as I was felt myself getting a bit stressed out. And it was so incredible, the difference that it actually made. Like it got to the point where you feel so stressed and you feel like, oh, I might be having a panic attack, I'm not sure. And it would go away. Like that feeling would just go away because you actually sat back, had a breath, got grounded. And I was just like, this is incredible.
And you can kind of catch it before it gets to the point of like really pushing it.
Yeah, 100%. And even so, like not being stressed or anything, grounded as well. Like I do it all the time, and it's just to be present. Like sometimes you're so busy and you just feel a bit tired, and then I sort of do that, wherever I am, and you actually just feel like, all right, I'm here, this is what's happening, and you get a little bit refreshed. So it's not even just for like a stressful environment. It's actually just for like when things are a bit busy, or, you're trying to, figure out what you're doing, where you are, make things a bit clearer. It's very useful for that too.
So when you're doing it, like I kind of want to do it. Like, so you'll sit there and you're like,
yeah,
you have a breath?
Yeah, so just a little bit of a breath. And then honestly, it could just be simple as just looking around and just making note of what's around you. And then it's like what you're hearing. So like at the moment, obviously I'm hearing my own voice, but you just make note of what you're hearing, what you're touching, and like touch is a huge like sense for me.
Yeah.
So I'm just like feeling things. And then honestly, by the time like the minute's up, it's only so quick.
Just a minute.
It could be so quick. pending what you're doing. Like you could be sitting out in public, you could be chatting to someone while it's happening. And honestly, it happens all the time. Like I'll be chatting and I can feel it and it's just like something so small and then you're back. Really? It's like you're back in the place.
So it's like if I was here now, I'd be like, okay, well, what can I see? I can see lights. I can see outside. I can see you. I can see the microphone. What I'm hearing, I can hear my voice. I can hear your voice. I can hear like some little bit of traffic outside, which probably isn't good for the podcast. Hopefully it doesn't show up on this. Yeah. And then feeling like I can feel my shoes. I can feel my socks. I'm feeling my knee and then just like being back.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's really, and like it doesn't even have to be that huge. Like I learned at the start, it took me a while to get used to, and now I can do it in like 10 seconds.
Gotcha.
Like it's a really useful tool and it's so cool just to like bring you back to where you are.
I think that that conversation around like being present is super important, and it's something that I'm super conscious of before coming into a podcast. And I don't know how I got to it because I've heard of these things before. Like I've heard of being present. I know being present's really great. I know meditation's really great for being present. But before a podcast, there's this thing that I'll do. I'll sit in, I'll just have like 5 seconds, like I'll take a deep breath and then I'll just think, be calm, be curious, be present, because they're the three things that I think are super important when you're doing a podcast and having a conversation. Like being calm, so you're not overstimulated, you're not rushing. Be like curious, so curiosity, like I've got a notepad next to me with like a bunch of things that I want to talk about, but you'll see me, I probably will hardly look at it because I want to be curious here. But then also the last thing is what you talked about, is like being present, and that's like such an incredible thing, not only for podcasts but just for general conversations. Yeah,
it's so incredible. And I think the best part about it is like I actually have no idea. Like, but this kind of works for me. Yeah. And so like that would work for you, and so many different things would work for other people. But I'm actually, not that spiritual, not that, like I'm pretty highly strung sometimes. And people might listen to this and think she mustn't do meditation or anything. But yeah, it works for me, and it's just a little quick fix. And yeah, it's pretty incredible that different things work for different people.
It's cool, like those sliding door moments. Hey, like that one little conversation with, what'd you say, Doozy?
Yeah, Doozy. Shout out to Doozy.
Shout out Doozy.
She's a great friend.
That's so, but I think about that all the time. It's just like one little moment, one little conversation, one little person you've met changes like the whole trajectory, like in being introduced to the sports psych. Like, do you still talk to them now?
Yeah. So I touch base every now and again, which I think is cool. Is like, you go through periods, like it was a year, I think, where I was all sweet, and then something happened and it was like bang, bang, bang. It's like, okay, you need to go back and sort of get a top up. So yeah, it was so funny how that all worked out. And like we spoke about, I'm just grateful for the experience because I learned so much.
Yeah. Do you talk to a sports psych about personal things, or is it just around performance?
Personal things. And I think that's what's crazy is what's happening in your personal life can really play a part in performance. Like some people can obviously just go and turn it on. But when we're talking about a season and we're talking about a lot of things building up, like you need to be happy and stable in your own personal life. And
that's what I've found from my own lived experience, but then also talking to crew. It's just like when you're happy off the field, you're way more likely to have positive results on the field. It's kind of like, look at Penrith, right? Like they have positive results, but then I imagine, when you have that winning, like when you win, everyone comes in on a Monday and they're pumped and everyone's happy and they're joking around. Whereas like if you lose, you come in on the Monday, it's like some guys might be kicking stones, and then like, I don't know, you might be having like dramas with your partner or whatever it is. And it's like, it's just different environments. And so how important environments are. Who do you surround yourself with? Like who do you knock around with at Newcastle? Do you have like, because you moved there pretty much by yourself?
Yeah. So I actually moved and we got put up in apartments, and it was really funny. This is similar to like a Millie story, is like our apartments, had to be kicked out, and I had every intention of re-signing, but the CBA wasn't done. Yeah. So I was like, I don't actually have anywhere to go. I've left my apartment on the Gold Coast. Yeah. I think I have to go back to Rockhampton. I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing. And the Southwell girls, who I was pretty good friends with in the season, were like, just come live with us. Like, there's a bed here. Like, just crash. And the CBA just kept going and going and going.
Forever.
It went for like 3 months. And I was just like, oh my goodness, I didn't think it would take this long. And it was really cool in that time that I met the S&C that's with us now, and I'd spent so much work in that off season to lead into last year.
Yeah.
So I look at everything that happened, not having a place, the girls in their family sort of taking me in, and I worked so hard in that off season and was able to, you know, have a pretty good year in terms of just staying on the field injury free. But yeah, so I ended up living with them for like a year, and I've just sort of moved out.
How was Jessie and Hannah to live with?
Oh, they're so funny.
They're the best day.
They are so funny, and people probably wouldn't know, but like they like sisters, but they just never fight. They're
Really?
actually just like best friends.
Gotcha.
And it's like really cool. So like we were kind of just like the three best friends, and they've got brothers as well. So their brothers are really funny too. But yeah, it was actually a really good time, and we spent probably a couple months of that just seeing Newcastle, just relaxing, you know, just doing gym and being away from football. And that was so refreshing to come back into last year's season.
Newcastle is such a beautiful place, hey?
It's incredible.
My
I love it.
mum grew up in Newcastle, in Katara South. Yeah,
Yeah.
so sick. When we like a lot of like family friends, like Paul Harrigan, his family obviously from Newcastle, but we would holiday with them every year. We'd go to their place, and it was like such a beautiful spot. It's kind of like the Goldie a little bit, but like maybe a little bit more slower.
Yes, and I think that's what I liked about it, because the Gold Coast got a bit busy for me.
Yeah.
And Newcastle, like I said, when I was flying over and saw Industrial, I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
But it's so chill, and you can go further in to all the action if you want to.
Yeah.
So I think that's the best part about it.
Life after footy? Do you think about it? You're only what, 25 years old?
27.
Are you 27?
Yeah.
Oh, well, hey,
That's a compliment.
me and you both will take it. I wish I looked
Yeah.
25. Life after footy. What do you think about that? Is that a front of thought thing?
Yeah, definitely. And I currently work in the Indigenous community space, and that's definitely my passion. So I've been doing that for a while now. And
What do you do with them?
So I work in the community department. So I work actually for the club.
Gotcha.
Previous to that, I was with Deadly Choices
Yeah.
here on the Gold Coast, which I absolutely loved. It's all around healthy lifestyle and getting into communities and getting into schools. And I think, you know, it's definitely my passion, seeing the young kids and educating them on just little tips I sort of wish I knew.
Yeah.
But now sort of going to Newcastle, I obviously couldn't leave that job. So that was probably a part of my deal, was we will get you a job in this space, because it was so hard to get a job in that space, and I absolutely loved it. I didn't want to give it up. So that was probably the best thing about relocating, was I was able to have access to that job. So yeah, that's what I do at the moment, and I absolutely love it, purely because there's so many talented Indigenous kids out there,
Yeah.
and they're so untapped. So I think actually just getting out in the schools and them seeing it, they're actually able to believe that they can get there. But yeah, so that's what I'm doing, and I want to continue doing, but I also want to get into coaching.
Yeah.
Like I absolutely love it. Like you said, I'm a bit of a footy nerd, but I love breaking it all down and learning. And yeah, I think after footy, that's the sort of space I want to get into.
You seem super curious, yeah. Like even before the podcast, you're like, oh, like you're studying psychology. Like psychology is so interesting. Your sister's studying psychology. Would you ever do like anything down that path? Because it's kind of like tied in, yeah.
Yeah. So I think so. I have tried to study a few times, but I just never got there. I'm bad at decision making, but
Yeah.
I definitely love that side of sport. I think the mental side, and there's so much learning to be done, and I'm still learning, which is what is exciting, I think.
Tamika, I have absolutely loved this conversation. This has been such a cool chat. Before we do wrap things up, is there anything that you think we've missed or you'd like to touch on before finishing up?
No, I think we've covered it. And you did warn me that like you sit and chat and then it's like, bang, it's over. It's like so quick. So no, I think we covered everything, and it was really cool just to be able to sit back and talk about, you know, the different parts to sport.
I think there's so many key takeaways, like even for me, like talking about the grounding exercise, like validating the fact of like going through panic attacks and being uncomfortable in situations, and even just your whole journey, you know, going through injuries and the experience of becoming a leader in a team. So no, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on board. Good luck for this Thursday night. Hopefully when we release this, we got to win. Queenslanders got to win.
Yes.
But no, thank you so much. I'm going to be looking forward to your next year and the next couple of games.
Sweet. Thank you very much for having me.
Easy.